What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another preview stream as Spurs face Brighton at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. 3 o'clock kickoff tomorrow, which is a game that most definitely promises goals. As you remember, cast your mind back to December when we last played Brighton. We got a bit of a humbling in that first half. We did, in the last stage of that game, we created enough chances to probably get back into it. But in my opinion, we owe Brighton something this weekend, and we have to give it to them. We have to kickstart a really good run in the Premier League. We've got a nice run of fixtures now where we can go on a decent run. And not only do we have a nice run of fixtures, but all the players are back, with only Ryan Sessegnon and Manuel Solomon out injured. For the first time this season, it looks like we've got very close to a clean bill of health.
Yeah, and it's a massive positive because it doesn't just boost you from a starting 11 standpoint, which is obviously fantastic. But you look at the last few weeks who've been bringing on off the bench to kind of see out games. Brian Hill, Oliver Skipp, Højbjerg has been either starting or coming off the bench. And hopefully going forward now, we have a lot more technical ability to see out games how Ange wants us to see out games, which I guess we'll get into with some of his quotes. It's kind of caused a bit of controversy, I think it's fair to say. Some of his quotes today in his press conference, we'll talk about that in due course. But to have all these options off the bench now is a massive, massive boost. And hopefully it can lead going forward to Spurs building up some momentum into the latter stage of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a boost to specifically have Heung-min Son and Yves Bissouma back. We've seen struggles in midfield the last couple of weeks with Bentancur not really up to it, not really performing at the best of his abilities and levels at this moment in time. And you've seen massive struggles in the forward line, to be honest. And Heung-min Son has been a massive, massive miss for this football club. And it's just so good to see them back in the frame. We don't know if they're going to start or not. I mean, we'll get into the predicted lineup a bit later, but on those two players specifically, do you think they've got chance?
I think probably Son being the captain. I think if he's fit and available, I think the temptation will always be just to chuck him straight in. I think he's going to be desperate to play. Obviously, it was really disappointing on Tuesday being knocked out by Jordan. You could see the disappointment on his face very visibly. But being back in the Tottenham environment, in the Tottenham family, he'll want to be that leader again. And I think even if it means, okay, he plays like an hour or 70 minutes and he comes off, you got to remember, earlier in the season, even when he was fully fit, he was being taken off, fairly early in the beginning of the season. So I think if Ange feels like he can get an hour or 70 minutes out of him, I think the temptation will be to start him. Yeah,
I completely agree. And, the quality of the man as well, the quality of the player, we just need someone of that quality in the front line as well, with the lackluster performance a bit going forward in the last couple of weeks. But in terms of, let's look at the form that Spurs and Brighton are coming into this game in. Brighton, a bit of an up and down form at the moment, 3 wins in their last 5. Spurs, even more of an up and down form with only 2 wins in their last 5. But you know what you're going to get with Brighton. They're going to score a lot of goals. They're going to concede a lot of goals. I mean, you'll probably say the same about Spurs, to be honest. But what can we learn from maybe the last game against Brighton that we can take into this one?
What can we learn? Well, I think playing the way we wanted to play against a Brighton side who are obviously very good in possession, very energetic, wait for you to come and press them. They kind of want you to press them, and you're doing that with, I think the game we played at the Amex, we had Ben Davies and Emerson playing centre-back. We had Højbjerg starting. We didn't have Lo Celso or Kulusevski as well. So it was very difficult to kind of sustain periods of attack when we were really struggling to build up our play. I think we gave the ball away in our own defensive third more times than any other match this season. I think Brighton was so aggressive, and then because we commit risk to the way we play, and Brighton are a very good attacking side, and on their day, they can play through most teams. So I think having Van de Ven Romero is going to make a massive difference. Having 2 players who are not going to lose those one-on-one battles. I think Emerson had a lot of battles with João Pedro, just one-on-one duels, which Pedro was just kind of licking his lips every time he got one-on-one with him and was able to create chances. I think having a more technical ability in the centre as well, more ability to hang on to the ball and build up play. A midfield 3 of Højbjerg, Sarr and Kulusevski, on paper, not terrible, but I think the technical ability in terms of hanging on to the ball, being press resistant, playing on the half turn, it is lacking a bit in that midfield 3 that we played on that day. So I think having Bissouma, hopefully Bentancur a week more of coming back to full fitness, having Maddison back as well, and then as well off the bench when we're tiring, you have players like Bissouma, Lo Celso as well coming off the bench to see out the game or to give us a second win is going to be massively beneficial going into a game against Brighton, who they only know kind of one way of playing. They're not going to come and sit back. They're not going to try and soak up pressure. I know they've been playing a back three recently, so maybe that's an indication they've been trying to shut up shop a bit more recently, trying to avoid that goals conceded column extending even more. But I think Spurs, with the home advantage as well, we're going to be right on top of them. We're going to go for them, and they're going to leave spaces, and we're going to be able to exploit them. But also, the big thing that we did do or didn't do at the Amex is we actually regained the ball quite often in their defensive third. We were actually quite intense in our pressing, but we didn't take advantage of the opportunities we got when we won the ball high up the pitch. We didn't have the quality to take advantage of that, and hopefully, with the better attacking players available to us, that can change in this game.
And obviously different better options off the bench as well, like you mentioned. I mean, in that game, we brought on Alejo Veliz, who obviously scored that game, and we got stronger as the game wore on. In the last 20 minutes, we created so many chances, didn't we? And it was very unfortunate that we didn't get back into it. And you look at the head-to-head between the two clubs, and last season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, towards the end of the season, we beat them 2-1, but that didn't really tell the story of the whole game. Felt like Brighton played really well that game. We got fairly lucky with a absolutely stunning goal from Heung-min Son that day. How are we going to stop this Brighton side, with the high line that we have?
I think it's going to be about outdoing them on the footballing side. I think that's how we're going to stop them. We're going to have to be better at keeping the ball. We know Brighton like to keep the ball and like to keep possession. So we're going to have to be, our pressing game is going to have to be top notch to make sure that we're disrupting their play and we're not allowing them to build up the way they like to. And I think it's just going to be about sometimes the best form of defense is attack. And I think that's going to be the case in this game.
All the time under Ange.
Yeah, and I think that's how we try and play. Brighton are 5 games away from home without a win, so clearly they're not as good away from home as they are at home. When we did play them at home, although we were going into the game, fairly confident we can give them the game, I think they're still this season they've only lost 1 or 2 games at home. So even though maybe they haven't won every game, they're not losing many, so they're still tough to play against. Home advantage does make a difference. So I think being in front of the Tottenham fans, where I think we've won the last 3 now, we're building up some momentum at home. I think with the reception, hopefully Bissouma and Son get back in front of the home fans as well. That's going to give everyone a lift. So I think in terms of stopping Brighton, first of all, João Pedro's out. He's been in great form, and that's a massive plus for us. He just stretches the play. He's so physical as well. He's he's developing into a really good top quality striker, a good Premier League standard striker, which maybe at the beginning of the season he didn't have the best form, but he's really grown into it. So him being out is a massive plus. It's going to mean that they're going to have less outballs, I feel like, without him. Hopefully Matoma as well, if he's not available in this game, that ability for them to get it to a winger who's going to be really good in one-on-one situations is going to be a bit diminished as well. And it's just going to be about winning that midfield battle. I think Brighton love to keep it in the centre. Billy Gilmour, very underrated centre midfielder. I think him, Pascal Gross, really good technical players in the centre as well. So if we can stop them playing their build-up, stop them passing it around like they like to, get in their faces, make sure they're not getting the supply to people like Ferguson, maybe Welbeck, Buonanotte, who they've been playing in the front line recently. I think it's all going to be about nullifying their threat through lack of supply, basically. And I think we're capable of doing that.
Yeah, I think it's really important as well, like in this game specifically, just the kickstart that kind of run that I was talking about at the beginning of the preview, where you're looking at our next 5 games. Obviously, we got 3 home games in a row now. And I'm looking at, we don't have to, but I think to put ourselves in a really good position to get 3 wins out of the next 3 in the home games. Like you say, we're building up a lot of head of steam at home. And if we get these 3 wins in the next 3 games, I think we can put a bit of daylight in between us and Aston Villa before we play them next month. So I think it's so important to start this run now. All our players are back. There's no real excuses to drop these points against what you call probably mid-table teams at home.
Well, he definitely doesn't have the excuse of lack of personnel available, that's for sure. That excuse now, I mean, yeah, maybe with players coming back from injury, it might take him a game or 2 to really get back into the rhythm. So I wouldn't necessarily expect them to. I'm not 100% convinced they're going to go into this game and hit the ground running straight away. But in terms of going forward now with everyone fit, I don't think he hasn't been using the excuse, to be honest. It's been the fans using the excuse in terms of when he's trying to see out these games. He wants to see them out in a certain way, and he doesn't have the personnel off the bench to do that. So I think we've struggled late in games recently. It's no secret. And I think now, with everyone back, we have players off the bench who can really contribute, who can contribute to the team on a technical standpoint. There's no real excuses going forward about players missing, injuries, all this kind of stuff, because we've got players. But not only do we have players back, we've actually added, because Dragushin and Werner are there as well, who weren't there at the beginning of the season. So we have even more depth than we had in that run where we went 10 games unbeaten at the beginning of the season. So the excuse is definitely, obviously it doesn't mean like we have no excuse like not to win every game. Look, you drop points sometimes, that can happen. Even with your first choice 11, we're not the finished article. There are still problems we have to iron out. Even with our first choice 11, we're not a perfect team. But in terms of dropping points, where I would say more performance level, the performance level hasn't been that great. Probably since in the past, I would say since the new year, since Son went to the AFCON. I think since we lost Bissouma, Sarr and Son, the performance level's been a bit iffy. Burnley at home weren't great. United away played well, but maybe didn't create enough chances. Everton last week, we should have done. We could have played a lot better, especially in the first half. Man City at home, we had one shot on target, which again, even against a team like Man City, is not good enough for an Ange team. So I think that kind of element, in terms of like why we're not creating enough chances, why we're not being more solid defensively. We've conceded 2 goals in our past 3 games in the Premier League. So I think those things, there's no excuse. But in terms of results wise, that can happen. I'm not going to sit here and after an unlucky defeat say, there's no excuse to lose that. Sometimes that can happen. But in terms of performance level, there's no excuse to try and get back to where we were in the first half of the season.
First 10 games, 100%. And I'd even go as further back now. I don't think our performance levels have been anywhere close to those first 10 games since we've had all these, since the Chelsea game, pretty much. I think it's been that far, and that's a long stretch of time. But, Ange, like you say, hasn't been using the excuses. But I think there have been excuses. There have been excuses, and I think the fans are right to use those excuses, because we've just had a shell of a squad than what we had in the first 10 games of the season. It's just not been of the required quality. For the most time, we've been playing Ben Davies and Emerson Royale at centre-backs, and that's just not good for any Premier League side.
I would say the performance level since the Chelsea game obviously hasn't been as good as the first 10 games. That's no secret. But what I would say is that stretch of games since the Chelsea game, maybe obviously forget Wolves, apart from that game, we were still quite good in terms of like creating chances and playing front foot football and looking dangerous and being dominant in games. Even though we weren't getting the results, we were still putting in good performances. Now, I'm saying those performances have dried up a bit in the last 5 games. We're not even putting in those dominant chance creating performances like we were. So we need to get back to that. We need to start looking intense again, creative again, and that has been a problem. What I would say about Brighton though is they want teams to come and play the way we're going to play against them. They want us to press them. I was listening to Kevin Prince Boateng, who had De Zerbi as his manager when he was at Sassuolo, and he was saying that when teams come and press them, they used to lick their lips. They couldn't wait for teams to try and win the ball off them, press them, because that's exactly what they wanted. They bait the press, and then they kind of play around them, play with their quick interchanges, and hit them where they're leaving the space. He said where they used to struggle was when teams didn't want to press them, when they stood off them and they were asked to break them down. He said then we had to find different solutions, and we used to struggle against those kind of teams. So Spurs are definitely going to go in that other way. We're going to try and press them. We're going to try and win the ball back very quickly. We're going to try and hit them. We're going to try and win the ball back in their third, and they're going to be waiting for that. So we have to be prepared that they're going to be waiting for that, if you know what I mean. So it's not going to be an easy game. I'm sure Brighton, they're a good quality team. Even with injuries, they've still got very good technical players who can pass very quickly, very accurately, progress the ball forward. So it's all about going to be if that midfield can cover the space required, whether the defence can not get caught out as often as it has been doing recently, and everyone doing their jobs off the ball correctly if we're going to make sure that this game's going to go smoothly. I don't expect this game to go smoothly, but what I do expect is we're going to create a lot of chances. And I think with our attack versus their attack, we should be able to put more chances away than they do. But I do expect Brighton will give a few moments where they're getting in on our goal, and we have to just make sure that we're more clinical than they are.
Yeah, and I want to see us use. Like, I think I spoke about it in the preview or review of the Prem with the. I think I used it in the context of Liverpool, but I want to see us like use that hurt that we had at the Amex. That, you know, conceding 4 goals at the Amex is nowhere near good enough, especially the way we performed for the first hour of that game. So I really hope Ange has drilled it into them, like to use that hurt in this game and to come out a bit angry and to take it out on them and really stamp our authority early in this game. It's been way too often where we've come out the blocks quick in the first 10 minutes of games and then kind of diminished in that first half. You saw it against Everton. You've seen it in the last few games, to be honest. And we need to stamp our authority in games for a lot longer periods than we're doing at the moment. And I think this is a good opportunity. And yeah, like you say, this is probably what Brighton want. They want us to come out. But I think that with the quality that we do have, we can work around that and we can score the goals and we can be clinical. And if we do that, I think there could be quite a lot of goals in there for us this weekend.
One thing I would say as well about Brighton, when they did beat us, apart from maybe the Man City game in the FA Cup more recently, they're probably the first team or one of the only teams this season who have really outplayed us on a footballing standpoint. They've really outpassed us. They passed through us. It wasn't just a case of, you know, the Wolves game or the other games where it's against teams who are sitting back and being very defensively resolute and hitting us on the counter. They're one of the only teams this season who have gone toe-to-toe with us on a footballing standpoint and really came out on top and were better than us on a footballing standpoint. And you've got to remember, you know, De Zerbi's been there now since October or November last season. He's had a lot longer with his team than Postecoglou. So from that standpoint, they may be a bit well oiled in a weird way from a footballing standpoint than we are necessarily. But our progression this season has been very, very quick, especially when we have a lot of players available. So I do, and especially a lot of the points that you can see Brighton have dropped away from home. I think the fact that we're at home and the fact that we've got all these players back and all these quality players back, we do have better players than them. That is the truth. So if we can play to our potential with our ability on the pitch, I do see us exploiting Brighton more times than they exploit us.
Yeah, and there should be a bit of a sense of occasion in the stadium tomorrow as well, with Sonny coming back, with Bissouma coming back. I want the fans to be completely up for it in this one, and, you know, welcoming back Sonny the way that he should be welcomed back, especially after such a hurtful campaign for him, losing to Jordan in semi-finals in the way that they did. So I think if we do that, if the fans are up for it, that should in tune kind of G the players up that even bit more. And I'm really expecting 3 points this weekend. I don't think anything else would cut it, to be honest.
Anything else would be a massive disappointment. Just like not winning last week was a massive disappointment, even without the fact that we were 2-1 up going into the 90th minute. I think before the game, anyone would have said a draw away at Everton, even though it's a difficult place to go, is disappointing because we know of the potential this team can play at. But looking at this Brighton team, in terms of players who I'm looking at, who I'm a bit wary of, obviously Evan Ferguson, who's had, to be fair, a bit of a downturn in form since
hasn't played much. That's the thing.
An early flurry this season. Obviously got that hat-trick against Newcastle. He was looking like a world beater. And he hasn't played much because he hasn't been playing well. That's the truth. João Pedro's been in great form. He's preferred Danny Welbeck on occasion. But maybe Ferguson will see this as a big opportunity for him to get his place back in the first team. He just, 18 years of age or 19 now.
You expect ups and downs.
Exactly. It's going to happen. Doesn't mean he's any less of a threat. He's obviously very physical. He's a great finisher. We've got to make sure we're not getting the supply to him. I think Billy Gilmour is one of the most underrated centre midfielders.
He's had a brilliant season
in the league. I think he's a really good technician. He's a great operator in the centre. He's really good in the tight spaces. And if we're looking to press him, if I'm looking at pressing Brighton, he's the one I'm worried about in terms of, is he going to be able to wriggle through our press? Is he going to be the one midfielder in that team who's going to be able to be press resistant and advance Brighton up the pitch? I'm worried about him. We have to make sure he's not having an influence on the game. Pascal Gross, obviously, really good at creating chances when he's given time and space. He's got a brilliant pass on him. Not the quickest, not the strongest, but he makes up for it in other ways.
I'm actually much more worried about Pascal Gross when he plays higher up the pitch. When he plays in that number 10 position, he's so much more dangerous than when he plays a bit deeper. I'm actually not too worried about him if he plays in that role that we've got him there. You saw him in the last game, I think, against Crystal Palace. He did play a bit further up the pitch, and you saw him get back into the goal contributions, where when he actually plays deeper, he doesn't get too involved in those goal contributions.
Yeah, which would benefit us massively if that was the case, because I don't think he's the best defensively. I think he puts in a shift. It's a bit like Eriksen. When Eriksen used to play in that role, it's like he makes the runs, but he's not putting in the challenges. He's not making tackles. He's not winning the ball back for you, but he is getting them in the positions. He is making sure it's at least a bit difficult for the opposition, but he's not going to be one who's going to have like 4 or 5 tackles at the end of the game. So I think that's obviously great. And obviously Estepinian, if he does start in this game as well.
He did against us last game. What a goal that was. But
yeah,
it's been since that game. That was his first game back, wasn't it? Through injury. But since that game, he's been in and out the team, still struggling with injury a little bit. Didn't play too much in that Crystal Palace game. So maybe we're catching him at the right time where he's not actually 100% fit.
Yeah, but look, he came off the bench last week, so maybe he's getting back to full fitness. And you saw, as you said, what he did to us at the Amex. And that was a point in the game, actually, that Spurs were actually getting back in the game in terms of on the balance of play. We started to dominate a bit, started to create a few more chances. I think Richarlison had 2 goals ruled out for offside just before he stuck that in the back of the net. And obviously at 3-0, the game was pretty much over at that point. So he's got that quality. I think he's one of the best left-backs in the league when he's fully fit. I really believe in his quality. So he's going to be on Pedro Porro's side. So if they play on that wing-back system, we've seen sometimes when we play against wing-backs, they're very good at finding that space on the left-hand side because Porro likes to tuck in, and when you're playing the wing back, they like to hug the touchline, and they've still got a player further ahead of them who either finds that space on the wide or likes to be kind of an inverted forward. So that leaves at times a lot of space for the wing back, unless you've got someone like Werner or Johnson or whoever's going to play on the right hand side tracking back all the way. It's very difficult to pick them up. So I think if they are going to play wing backs, we saw how Hinshelwood had a lot of joy against us at the Amex as well, picking out those spaces in space, and he's a really talented 18-year-old as well. So in a weird way, I think the best formation to combat Spurs is probably the back 3 of wing-backs. I do think that's a formation that worries me the most when we come up against it, because the wing-backs are harder to track, and you still got to focus on the players inside. That's why we struggled against Brentford so much. It's why we've struggled a lot against a lot of the teams who do play 3 at the back. Wolves away, we've struggled a lot against them playing 3 at the back. So if Brighton do go in that formation, that would worry me a bit, but I still look at their back 3 with Dunk, Van Hecke, I think Julio, Verbruggen in goal as well. And I just think if we can get at that back 3 or back 5 even, I just don't think they're the best quality. I do think we can get a lot of joy out of them when Richarlison in the form he's in, with Son coming back, with the forward options we have available all of a sudden to us. I think that back 3 is definitely exploitable for sure.
Of course it's exploitable. You see it week in, week out with the results that they have. So up and down. Some weeks they can win 4-0. The next weeks they can concede 5 goals.
You lost to Luton 4-0.
You know what I mean? Exactly. So I think that if you put that defence under pressure, if you really test them, then they'll get found out. And I think that we've got the quality to do that. And I think we will do that tomorrow at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But let's talk about these Ange comments in the press conference. He's talking about... he's saying he was apologising. He's saying we're a team that will score last-minute goals, but we're a team that will also concede last-minute goals. What did you make out of that?
Well, if we get the full quote just for context of what he actually said, because there hasn't been a part of the quote that's been obviously circulating, but he said... He was asked about, Spurs conceding late goals in games, and if that's a problem he needs to rectify. He said, it's disappointing to concede goals late on. It's disappointing to concede goals early. Either side of half-time is not great. Round about the 70th minute, mate, you get disappointed. I don't care. I get it. People want to analyse it. That's fine. We're always going to be a team that score goals or concede goals late. The way we want to close out games is by scoring more goals. That's not going to satisfy everyone, and the stats stats, and the stat heads will explode with me explaining it that way. But it's just the team we want to be, and that's the most important thing for me. The thing for me that we haven't done so far, and what we won't do, is jump at shadows trying to fix what the current potential issue is. We're building a team here, and we're building a way of playing, and for me, that is the most important thing. It was disappointing to concede late last week, but overall, at a difficult place, for the most part, we handled it okay. So a lot of people are accusing Ange of kind of, I don't know, being naive, or not a lot of people are not happy with what he said. So they think that, you know, you have to have a lot more game management. You have to be sometimes more pragmatic late in games when you're only leading by one goal, and you shouldn't be leaving yourself exposed when you're protecting a lead. And I do understand that point of view, but I said this in the panel show. The way Ange wants to see out games is by passing the opposition to death, is by continuing to put them under pressure and going for more goals. If you have the ball in their half in the last few minutes of the game, and you're passing it around them and looking for more goals, that's going to keep them defending, and it's not going to allow them to get up the pitch and you know, score themselves. So I think that's his vision of how he wants to close out games. I don't think he means, even the last minute at 1-0 up, we're going to keep going gung-ho, we're going to push everyone forward, and, you know, we're going to send the goalkeeper up from corners when we're 1-0 up. You know what I mean? I don't think he means like we're going to go full out attack even when the game is tied. But I do think what he's trying to say is we're a team that's going to continue to look to score. We're not going to just shut up shop and park the bus when we're leading 1-0 with 10 minutes to go. We're going to continue to look for more goals and try and kill off the game. And I think that is the right way of approaching things. I know people will say, well, I know people look at last week against Everton, and also in a few games this season where we've either been leading, but the results been precarious, and we've conceded late chances, and either we've cost games like against Wolves or against Everton, or we've nearly have like against Brentford or against Man United, or, you know, Burnley. There's been times where we've conceded late chances, but I think the reasons for those isn't because we've been naive in how we've approached it, because you've got to remember, in those games, whatever Ange wants to say, he brought a Dragushin on in those games and went to a back three, and that could definitely be perceived as a way of trying to protect the result. But I think the reason why we haven't been ending the games that well is because he is trying to finish those games in the way he wants to, by continuing to play our football and go for more goals. Yet when we make subs late on in games and we lessen the technical quality of the team, and then also obviously we're tiring because the intense way we're playing, it leads to get the opposition gaining more encouragement. It leads to Spurs not hanging on to the ball the way we want to hang on to the ball. And then obviously when you give the opposition encouragement, it leads to chances being created and leads to precarious positions. If you look at the way Man City like to see out games, they just keep the ball constantly, and they do try and score more. They like to play in the opposition half, and they just keep the ball so well, even when the team is pressing them, and even when they're, the team is trying to get back in the game, they're just passing the team to death. And but more often than not, they do get a third or a fourth late on. But sometimes they do concede late. Again, like Crystal Palace, they were 2-0 up, conceded 2 late goals. A few times they've been 3-0 up, and they do concede a late consolation because they are trying to score more goals constantly. And I think that's Ange's vision. But I understand fans looking at those quotes and thinking, is that a silly way of approaching the game? Is that a way that's going to lead to you winning trophies and whatever going forward? Because some people argue late in games you have to be smarter, and you can't just always attack, and sometimes you do have to batten down the hatches and be pragmatic.
And that's the kind of way I feel about things. Like, I love Ange ball. I love the way we play our football. I love this gung-ho style of approach, constantly attacking, constantly trying to be on the ball, constantly trying to be in possession. But I do feel like sometimes late in games when, the result is really close, that we should go a bit more. I know he's gone 3 at the back and it hasn't held us in good stead in those 2 games. Look at the Man City game, Dragusin's come on, we've conceded late. The Everton game was the same, Dragusin's come in and we've seen it off late.
In fact, every time we've gone 3 at the back, it hasn't really held that much.
No, exactly. And so I feel like there are ways that you can combat that, and there are ways that maybe tactically, or you can try different plays within possession and maybe just try and slow it down a little bit and keep possession in that way. But I don't know why does he have to say that if he knows it's going to just rile up the fan base? I don't have a...
I know, why would he know that? Well, I guess he kind of insinuated it because he said some people go mad about what I'm saying, but I don't know. But he's trying to instill a mentality that we never stop. We always keep going for more. and that's what he's trying to input. And maybe in the short term you might suffer a bit, but in the long term, then you'll benefit from it.
Like you look at the way Arsenal play, right, and their progression under Mikel Arteta, he's constantly changed the way Arsenal have played year on year. First couple of years they came, they were very pragmatic. And then last year they were like a gung-ho side. This year they've become a bit more pragmatic. And I feel like it's been smart the way they've done it, and they are creeping up the table. They are getting better year on year. And I feel like sometimes you do have to change the way you play for different opposition and different stages of the game, instead of just only having one way of playing, and that's it.
But for me, I think that's true, but I feel like you still need to develop like a base way of playing, in terms of you have to ingrain it in your team, and that doesn't take 6 months. It can take a long time to do that. And you, first of all, you ingrain that way, you perfect it, so it's very hard to stop. And then once you're at that level, you can start maybe tweaking it a bit.
But I think
for
these
certain
players
situations.
are natural at that. These players are natural at playing attacking possession-based football. I know that's not what we've been playing the last couple of years. I don't think they were natural at what Conte and Jose were trying to do. I think they're natural at this kind of way of playing football, attacking possession-based. So I feel like maybe the coaching needs to be a bit more on being pragmatic late in games to try and see out games.
I disagree, because I think that the reason why he does this is to see who's up to it right now and who's not. And then he can make judgments of who can handle doing this, even in a very highly pressured environment of looking to see out a game late. And then you can weed out who's good for it, who's not. And going forward, you can then, once you weed out those players, everyone's going to be able to see out the game and how he wants to do it moving forward. And then you'd be able to do it with high quality like the top teams do it. Right now, again, we're very early in the project, so it's not going to be perfect. We're going to try and do these things, and sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's not going to work because we have players who are not up to it. But once he works out who is and who isn't up to it, which you can only work that out by doing it, then you'll be able to, then in the long term, you're going to have a squad full of players who are able to see out a game by just passing and by attacking, and that's the way he wants to see out games.
I guess it's a case of people need to realize, as well as, I'm going to contradict everything I just said, I guess people also need to realize that we are very early on in this project. We are this is always supposed to be a building block season, right? And what a building block season means is you're building the blocks for the future projects and for the future seasons. And I think we're on such a good path right now. Everyone just needs to trust in everything that Ange wants to do, in my opinion. And yes, I said that we need to be more pragmatic in games late on. But also, I see it both ways. Like, in the short term, I would say we need to be more pragmatic in games late on just to get results here and now. But I do agree with you saying it will stand us in better stead in the future.
And look at seasons gone by. How many times we complained about Mourinho and Conte going 1-0 up or something and then trying to just see out the result and end up costing us late in games. Like, he doesn't want that mentality to seep back into the team. That's what they should do.
The players need to learn how to keep the ball better later on in games. That's what it comes down to.
I just feel like the players that are coming off the bench a lot of the time, or even starting when you have Højbjerg and stuff like that, when he has these kind of players in the team and we're trying to see out in the result in his kind of way, they're not capable of doing it. It's very difficult for them to do that because they're not up to it. Even when you have players like Brian Hill coming off the bench and you're asking him to exploit the space on the left-hand side that's going to be left by a team chasing the game, he's not able to do it. So it leads to the ball keeping coming back.
That should change now. That should change now with the players that are coming back into the team.
And look how it was in the first 10 games. We were seeing out games really well. I can't remember too many times in the first 10 games where I think there was one time against Palace where we were 2-0 up and we conceded in the 90th minute. Apart from that, we were pretty comfortable late in those games, seeing them out, because what we used to do is we used to pass it around and go for more goals. That's what we used to do. And we had players coming off the bench like Lo Celso and Solomon and whatever other players coming off the bench. Even Højbjerg was coming off the bench rather than starting. So that really helped us kind of see out those games. And at the moment, the last 2 months or so, it just hasn't been the case. We bring on Donnelly to see out the game, and Hill and Skip and all these players who it's just going to be more difficult to do that.
Yeah, it's mad to think as well when you look at Mickey van der Ven. Mickey van der Ven hasn't been on a losing side in the Premier League yet. It's actually mad, isn't it?
He hasn't been on losing side?
Yeah, in the Premier League.
Wow, that's crazy.
Obviously, he played the Chelsea game, but he went off
When we were
early
1-0
on
up.
in that game.
1-0 up or
I think it was 1-1 when he went off. But like obviously
Same with
that
Maddison
game
as well. Then
Maddison as well. But it's like these players haven't been on a losing side in the Premier League, and I think that in itself goes to show, like once we get like we have now, once we get our first 11 back, once we get this squad with options off the bench, I think we could go on a mad run. I really do.
I agree. It's very exciting. It's really exciting. Look, but I don't want to hide. I don't want people to think just because we have all these players back, we're now going to turn into prime Barcelona and we're going to be the best team in the league.
Nah, we're not going to turn into prime Barcelona. We're going to turn into prime Tottenham Hotspur. That's what we're going to turn into.
But like, I do think things will dramatically improve now from where we were for the last couple months. Not to say things were terrible, but I think things are going to get better.
Mentality. The first 10 games of the season, we have to get back to those ways of playing. We like those first 10 games of the season. We went into games probably after the Man United game, thinking we're winning this game. We're winning this game. We went into the game against the North London derby at Arsenal like full of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the last time we went into the game at the Emirates full of confidence.
Yeah,
and we took away a point, and we were good for a point. We could have taken away 3 points. You know what I mean? So we have to go back to that mentality where since we've got these injuries, we've been going into games like a bit like heads down a little bit, saying, hopefully we can get 3 points in this game. But in the first 10 games, it was more of an expectancy. We should be taking 3 points in this game. We need to get back to that now. Now we've got the first 11 back. Now we've got all these players coming back. Sonny is going to be vital to that. We've missed him so much since he's been out in the Asia Cup. So I'm expecting a big performance tomorrow. I really am.
I hope we make a statement. That would be great. If we can make a statement tomorrow, like we're back. This is going to be the Tottenham from now to the end of the season. Lots of goals, lots of chances created. That would be what the doctor ordered, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, score predictions, you sticking with 4-2?
5-2.
5-2.
I said 5-2. I think a big performance. I really think we're going to take the game to them. I think we're going to really go at them. I do think Brighton, we're not going to have it all our own way. I do see Brighton getting some joy and they're going to be waiting for us. They're going to be waiting for how we're playing. So I do expect them to put some passing moves together and cause problems. But I just think with our intensity, with the players coming back, with our quality as well, I think Brighton are just going to find it very, very difficult to live with us. So, and I don't see them changing the way of playing. I see them continuing to go forward and try and attack us. I think they're going to feel like attack is the best form of defence, and we're going to feel like that as well. But I feel like our quality is going to lead to more attacking situations for us, and we're going to be able to keep Brighton out more times than they keep us out. So I see a lot of goals, and I'm going 5-2 to Spurs.
Yeah, I also think Spurs are going to make a bit of a statement tomorrow. Sonny's back, Bissouma's back, options off the bench. I really want to see us go completely for their throats from the first minute and sustain that pressure as well, because we haven't been able to sustain pressure in the past couple of weeks against the various different teams we have been playing. Yes, 3 at the back is going to be difficult for us to play against, as it always is. But I think 3 at the back for Brighton is a bit different to like 3 at the back for like Everton or 3 at the back for Brentford. They don't have as good defensive players as those kind of teams do have. So I think we can find them out a little bit, find those spaces with the quality that we do have. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to Tottenham Hotspur, and I think that this has to kickstart a run for us now. With 3 home games in a row now, I want nothing less than 9 points in those next 3 games, and it should build that mentality and build that belief in the squad that we can go on a massive run from now until April. From now until April, we have got such winnable games. Obviously, the hardest one coming at Villa Park. But apart from that, you're looking at all those games and you think that we should be taking the 3 points in the majority of them. So if we can put ourselves in a really good run from now until April, where we go into that massive run starting with West Ham away, you never know where we can end up in the table.
And considering how we've played against a lot of the bigger teams anyway, who's to say that we're not going to win some of those games?
Exactly. So I'm going 3-1. Sim's going 5-2 to Tottenham Hotspur. Let me know your predictions in the comments section below. We've got a members chat here from Amir. Big up, Amir. He says, big up, everyone. Time to get back to winning ways. 3-1, Richie double and Maddison stunner in a big Ange we trust. 100%. And we didn't even mention Richie in the preview, and he's been the man on firing form. So, we just got to feed the man. Feed the man and he'll score.
And he did get 2 goals at the Amex, but unfortunately, they were both offside. But actually, if you watch them back, they were really good finishes right into the corner, which was really unfortunate that he was just flagged offside. But
is that the only game he hasn't scored in?
It is the only game since Newcastle he hasn't scored in. So that just goes to show the form he's in. And I think there's going to be I know they're going to might play 3 at the back tomorrow, but I think there's going to be a lot of chances for him. I don't think their 3 at the back is the same as like a Brentford 3 or an Everton 3, because they're defenders are not big, strong, loud. They're kind of more technical
Apart
defenders.
from Dunk, yeah.
I think he's a more technical defender, I see him
But he's
as.
also big and strong.
He is, but I think he's like... I don't think he's one of these defenders who dominates you.
Like when you're looking at the set pieces that we've been coming under threat with in previous games in the Man City and the Everton game, he's the only one that really worries me from defending set pieces because he's big, strong, he's a physical presence, but he's also technical and good on the ball. So I think he's got it all pretty much.
I like Lewis Dunk. Yeah, he's a good player.
But let's go on to the predicted lineup, the shortest injury list we've had in a long, well, pretty much all season, probably, to be honest. But Ange has been speaking at the press conference in terms of the injury list and what we got.
So obviously, Bissouma is back from the AFCON. He actually commented on his illness status. He said that he had a small bout of malaria, but he said it cleared up after the tournament. So he is 100% fit and ready, which is great. He said Son is obviously back and available. He said he's had a very tough tournament with South Korea, had a few extra times as well, but he trained today and is available to play. Giovanni Lo Celso had a week training, which is really positive. And he said he's not sure yet whether it's a week too early for him or not, but he did train all week. So, but he has missed a lot of football, so we have to wait and see in Lo Celso, but he should be available. He said Solomon had to have a small procedure on his knee, so he remains out, unfortunately for him, maybe for another 3 weeks or so.
Did he put a time frame on it?
He said about 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks. And Ryan Sessegnon continues his rehabilitation, so he continues out as well. But apart from those two, we're pretty much at full strength, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, so in goal, obviously going to be Vicario, and he has been coming under pressure in the last couple of games from set pieces, particularly in the first half against Everton and the latter stages of the game against Man City. And I want to see the centre backs or whoever's defending those set pieces give him a bit of protection.
Yeah, 100%. And if you cast your mind back to the Amex, he was like man of the match, wasn't he? He had an unbelievable game. I remember the Amex.
Conceded 4.
Yeah, but he was our best player. He made some unbelievable saves, which even goes to show how open we were. So I actually think I can see him making a few saves in this game, and he might have to because Brighton are a very attacking team. But 100% from set pieces, I really hope we've sorted it out going into this game.
Yeah. Moving on to right back Pedro Porro, who, if I remember correctly, didn't have the greatest game defensively at the Amex, but I want to see him improve on that. But also, I think in recent weeks, he hasn't been as strong going forward and using that ball playing ability that we know he has as consistently as he has probably for the most part of the season. So I want to see him get back to that because there'll be a lot of space for him this weekend if he works his magic.
But he's also got to watch out for Estepinian on that left-hand side, or if they do play a left winger as well, because that's going to be very difficult to deal with the how they hug the touchline, stick to the left-hand side. But I've always said our most important player in build-up for me is Pedro Porro with his passing ability. He always seems to find a clever pass to beat the press. He's got great vision, and that's going to be invaluable in this game when Brighton are pressing us.
On the right centre-back is obviously going to be Cuti Romero. He's in a really good vein of form, Romero. He has had a few iffy moments in terms of particularly in the Everton game with that header which found his way to the back post and we ended up conceding last minute. But I'd like to see him obviously cut those out of his games. But in general play, I think he's been really good. Yeah,
I think obviously probably Evan Ferguson's going to come into this game who's a very physical presence. He's going to be trying to back into Romero. He's going to be trying to hold up the ball that way. And I think hopefully Romero can try and bully him a bit because being a teenager, as much however good he is, hopefully Romero can smell a bit of blood there, make sure he's not allowing him to hold the ball up. I don't think there's going to be much threat in behind. I think Romero will have that on lockdown. So it's all going to be about can he stop Ferguson holding the ball up? And then when he does get the ball, can he make sure we're playing through Brighton confidently?
Left centre-back is obviously going to be Mickey van der Ven. We're not just saying Mickey van der Ven, record breaker Mickey van der Ven, who etched his name in the record books against Everton as the fastest ever Premier League player since records began. I mean, it makes it sound like such a, fastest ever, but it's literally in the last 4 years because records only began in 2021 season, but it's still an unbelievable achievement.
Well, Adama Traore was probably in the league last 4 years.
Adama Traore, Kyle Walker.
Exactly. So he's beaten a lot of players. Yeah, he's going to be really vital because we know that Brighton, when we do go forward, are going to try and hit us on the counter. I think without Pedro, definitely that's one of their biggest threats nullified, which is great. They're probably going to play, I'm going to assume, Danny Welbeck. So he's still quick. He can still be a bit of a nuisance, however poor he is in front of goal. So Van der Ven will have to make sure he's not getting it in behind. But I think Van der Ven's going to have an important role in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. With Brighton's ability to get in behind quite consistently, his recovery pace is just going to be invaluable to us in this game, 100%. Left back, Destiny Udogie, who's also playing really well at the moment. And again, another vital cog in the wheel.
Yeah, and I think if he can use his physicality to break their press rather than passing through them, that's going to be invaluable to try and making sure that Brighton aren't penning us in and aren't pressing us like they did at the Amex. And I think he did struggle quite a bit at the Amex, if I remember, because Hinshelwood was causing a lot of problems down that right-hand side. He actually scored the opening goal. So he has to make sure that he's not getting the same amount of space that he did at the Amex. But I think I feel like the two fullbacks, they break the lines in completely different ways, but just as effective. Porro does it with his passing, and Udogie does it with his sure physicality, just like a bulldozer charging through everyone.
Steam train.
Yeah, so I think if he can do that, against the likes of Gross or Gilmore in the centre of the park, that would be so invaluable to making sure Spurs getting up the pitch regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the back four, as you were. And then we're going to go in the number 6 position. We're going to side with Rodrigo Bentancur. Hasn't been well. It's probably his worst run of form in a Spurs shirt, to be honest, the way he's playing. He can't really... I don't know what's going on with him, to be honest, because it's just so uncharacteristic of Bentancur not being aggressive enough, not really... his passing's completely off it at the moment. But we're going to side with him, seeing as Bissouma is only just returning from international duty, and he hasn't been playing too much there as well because of his slight bout of malaria. So we are siding with Bentancur, but I really want to see him get back to those previous levels that he did show.
Yeah, and I think... hopefully his partner, midfield partner, which we'll talk about in a sec, will help him out a lot. I think that'll make a big difference. You got to remember, he's been playing in the number 8 sometimes. He's been playing in the number 6 next to like people like Skip or Højbjerg, which maybe hasn't been conducive to getting him up to speed with maybe his lack of physicality since his injury. I do think him in the 6 in this game would be beneficial. Obviously with Bissouma, as you say, he is fit, and Ange would say he's 100% available, but we're just thinking he's a bit out of form at the moment. Maybe he's recovering from something, so we're going to put him on the bench for now. We're going to give Bentancur a start, and I'm hoping he'd get back into his rhythm in this game.
Having said that, though, like Ange, when he sees a player isn't playing well, he does usually take him out of the team, and Bentancur definitely is in that category, to be honest. So I think there is a good chance that Bissouma does start this game, to be fair.
Could be either, yeah.
Yeah. In the number 8 position, it is a return to the starting lineup to Pape Matar Sarr. I felt like when he came on against Everton, without doing anything spectacular, I did feel like he gave us a bit more balance to that midfield, and we've missed him sorely since he has been out. So it's definitely a big welcome return to Pape Matar Sarr.
Yeah, I think so. And I think he's really going to help out Bentancur with his ability to cover so much ground with his non-stop running, and Porro as well as on the right-hand side. So I think it's going to be very valuable having Sarr back in the team. I think it's a no-brainer. He comes in that number 8 position. We always look so much better when he's in the team so far this season. So I thought he had a decent cameo off the bench against Everton as well. So I think he comes straight back in. No-brainer.
And then to make up that midfield 3 is going to be James Maddison. He's just slowly creeping back into form, James Maddison, in my opinion. And I think tomorrow, you're really going to see the James Maddison of old. He's had enough minutes now in his legs to really overcome that injury and to get back to match fitness. So I really think you're going to see a top-class James Maddison performance.
Yeah, and I think against... Brentford in the second half, he was starting to get back to his best. Against Everton, I actually thought he had a pretty good game. He got an assist, and I thought he was looking bright, forced Pickford into a couple saves. So I think we are starting to see Maddison get back into the full swing of things. And I think against Brighton, this is the perfect game for him to show what he's all about. I think he's going to operate in those spaces that Brighton don't want him to operate in. He's going to be able to pick up those spaces in and around the penalty area. So I think this could be a real important game for Maddison.
Yeah, and it's just looking like a really strong midfield, isn't it? To be fair, with Bentancur, Maddison and Sarr. On the right-hand side of the attack is an interesting one. We've sided with Timo Werner. seeing as Kulusevski and Brendan Johnson both not really playing well at the moment. So we're thinking Timo Werner has a chance to start out on the right.
Yeah, I think Werner's probably been, in terms of the wingers over the last few weeks, probably been the most in form. And I think Werner, there's no reason why he can't do his job he's been doing on the left, on the right, seeing as his job at the moment is to get to the byline, get those balls across the face of goal, run in behind, those kind of things. I definitely think he can do that on the right-hand side. So if his job is purely to get assists, I think he can do it as effectively as someone like Johnson's been doing. And Kulu has just not been on form recently. So we're going to side with Werner with a bit of a change of position on the right-hand side here.
Up top is obviously going to be the man in form, Richarlison. He's just been absolutely clinical. He's been brilliant, physical presence as well, doesn't stop running, and just carry on doing what you're doing pretty much.
Yeah, getting those right positions, getting those finishes in, making sure that when we get those cutbacks, he's in space to receive them and just get those shots on very, very quickly. And he's been doing that so well recently. Against Brighton, I'm sure he'll be able to find some space. I don't think Brighton are the best side defensively, to say the least, so I'm sure he'll be licking his lips at the prospect of getting some goals in this one. So I think he's got a big role to play. And also when he is holding it up, bring our wingers into play, bring Maddison into play as well. That's going to be very, very important. So I think Richarlison just carry on his good form.
Yeah, and then to make up that final 11, can you guess who's going to be on the left wing? Yeah, you got it spot on, guys. It's going to be the main man, the captain, Heung-min Son, and it's so good to see him back. Obviously, after suffering a lot of heartbreak with South Korea out in the Asia Cup, going out to Jordan in the semi-finals with a big, massive whimper for them. I want to see him use that hurt and channel it in this game particularly and really come back in firing form.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm not 100% sure whether he's going to play, over an hour or 70 minutes, considering how he exerted himself with South Korea. He did train by himself on Thursday, but today Ange confirmed he did train and he is ready and available to play. And seeing as he is our captain, seeing as he's such an important player and our best forward by a mile, I think there's no reason not to put him in from the start. I think we need to get him back involved as soon as possible. He needs to get the Asia Cup out of his mind and hopefully being back in the Tottenham environment, getting back into good form, getting back on the score sheet, even if it is for 70 minutes, I think that can be invaluable in a game like Brighton. Hopefully that can help kill the game off before he goes off. So I think Son back in the team and back amongst the goals.
Yeah, and being the captain of the club, even if he wasn't captain of the club, he'll be itching to start in this game. Absolutely itching for it. The mentality of the man, he always wants to go again. He always wants to do better. And I think he'll do that this weekend. And, if last year's anything to go by, look at the goal he scored against Brighton in that game. Mm-hmm. So, I think Son's going to score this weekend. I'm pretty certain of it. And even if he does go off with half an hour to go, just look at the options you have. You move Werner back over to the left, bring in Johnson or Kulusevski against tiring Brighton legs. I think it's invaluable, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So let's go through that lineup with you guys one more time. It's Vicario in goal, Pedro Porro right back, Destiny Udogie left back, a back two of Coutinho Romero and Mickey van der Ven, Rodrigo Bentancur, Pape Matar and James Maddison make up the middle three, with Werner, Son supporting Richarlison. I mean, I'm still undecided whether it is going to be Son on the right or Werner on the right or Werner on the left. I think it could be anyway. But I guess what it does give us, it could give us a bit of fluidity as well, with Brighton not knowing which one's going to attack from either side.
And think about the bench options now. As you said, like you've got Dragoshin on the bench, you've got Højbjerg, you've got Lo Celso, you've got Bissouma on the bench, you've got Johnson, you've got Kulusevski on the bench as well. So people who are coming on like as our first choice subs, people like Hill and Skip and people like Donnelly who are coming off the bench. They might not even make the bench now. So I think that just goes to show how much of an upgrade this is on our squad, and hopefully this could go a long way to making sure Spurs see out this game, and if we are taking the lead.
Yeah, people shouldn't underestimate how much injuries have just held us back this season, and I think you're going to see now over the next couple of weeks how much they actually were holding us back with these options that we have on the bench. So let's take it to him. Let's go seagull hunting this weekend. Let's take the 3 points. Let's kickstart our season once again with that mentality that we did show in the first 10 games. Sim is going 5-2. I'm going 3-1.
Who'd you back in a fight, a cockerel or seagull?
Cockerel, 100%.
Every time.
Have you never heard of the fighting cock?
Exactly.
Cockerels are meant for fighting.
Exactly. They did cockerel fighting, didn't they? In the cage. They never did seagull fighting. They never did seagull fighting. So there you go.
They never wrapped spurs along the seagulls' ankles. It was of the cockerel's ankles. So
exactly.
There you go. But that is it from us today. That is your match preview and that is your predicted lineup. Just a quick word saying that we are on all podcasting platforms now, particularly Spotify. So if you want to listen to us instead of seeing our ugly mugs, go over to all audio platforms and check that out. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.